Today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Teotihuacan, a game designed by the designer of Tolkien, and it's kind of the spiritual successor to Tolkien, which is one of my favorite games. Before I get to that, I want to mention real quick, I designed a game called Euphoria a while ago. It's a dice worker placement game, not all that dissimilar from the dice worker placement in Teotihuacan. And one of the core mechanisms early on in the design of Euphoria was that your dice, your workers, which represented kind of citizens of a dystopia that you were managing, they would accumulate knowledge, the pips on the dice, as they moved around the board. So as I took a one worker from one place to another place, that worker would learn information, more information about the dystopia, and this would be represented by increasing the pips on the dice from 1 to 2. And eventually, if you had a 6 worker and you moved them to a new location, they would go away permanently because they had too much information about the dystopia and they would run away. Now, we tested this mechanism, and it worked okay, but it wasn't all that fun because A, you weren't rolling the dice, and that's part of the fun of having dice in the game, that you actually get to roll them from time to time. And 2, B, when a worker got to that level 6 and beyond and they ran away, it wasn't fun because you were just using that worker to do regular things. And I had some mechanisms in the game where, like, you could take a worker to a place and have their knowledge reduced by a certain amount or reduced back to 0, like you reset their brain. It was a thematic thing that they would run away when they knew too much, but it wasn't particularly all that fun. And that brings us to Teotihuacan, which kind of figured out this mechanism. I don't know if they knew what I originally tried to do with Euphoria, but basically what they did is it's very similar to what I just described. You're taking these dice, you're moving them around the board in a circular fashion, kind of a Mancala-esque way, and you're taking different actions, and the pips on the dice mean different things at different actions. And when a worker reaches 6, and usually the more pips, the better, based on the action that you're choosing. And when a worker reaches 6, the worker does something called ascending. And you can kind of see it on the photo here. You can see this little chart here with the number 6. And there's some dice here, because when a worker gets to a 6, they ascend. I can't even remember what this means thematically, but I think they're just basically old and they die because they've been around for a while. And so they've gotten more and more powerful throughout the game, and then they ascend. And when they ascend, you get rid of that worker, and it becomes a 1 again. So you actually do keep the worker, but it becomes a 1. So you're not actually permanently losing the worker. That's a key to this. That's better than what I did for the original version of Euphoria, a version that doesn't even exist. This was a playtest version of the game. So A, you get the worker back as a level 1, and B, you get to choose one of these awesome bonuses in the game. So one of them is to get one of these workers. You get a new worker. One is you get 5, I think that's 5 currency or 5 victory points. 5 victory points, I believe. You can move up on a track. You can move up on 2 different tracks. There are all these, so it's 5 victory points, or you can get 5 cocoa. So all these awesome bonuses that you get. So instead of making it a bad thing when your worker ascends, even though it is going back down to a level 1, so it is getting weaker, instead of being a bad thing, you get an awesome thing, which is totally the opposite of what I was doing in the Euphoria prototype that I worked on early on when the worker escaped. So you get this really, really awesome thing when you use the same worker a lot. You're rewarded for doing that in multiple ways, because the actions get better because of the number of pips on the die, and because the worker ascends and gets one of these super powerful abilities. I love this element of Teotihuacan. It's really, really clever. It made me happy that someone else had figured out this thing that I couldn't figure out with Euphoria, and I really appreciate what they did with it. This is a game with a lot of mechanisms, so I'm sure if you've played this game, you might have another different favorite mechanism. I'd love to hear about that in the comments. Or if this reminds you of another ascension or aging or running away mechanism in a game where it actually feels good to kind of graduate a worker past a certain point, I'd love to hear about those examples in the comments as well. Thanks.